heart of the course. So far, what we did was we simply introduced the concept of central banking, and also we introduced the different departments that are engaged in providing the functions, performing the functions on behalf of the central bank, because we discussed about the central bank function, responsibilities, and all those things. Today, we are going to discuss about the monetary policy. Monetary policy is the core of this subject. Therefore, I'm going to go a little slow, but I want to invite all of you, if you have any questions, please disturb me, and then we can discuss. I don't mind repeating. We can discuss in details. Okay, right. And by now, I think you have understood the central bank balance sheet, because when we proceed discussing what central bank does under monetary policy, all those are reflected in the central bank balance sheet. Last time we saw central bank balance sheet has two sides, asset side and liability side. When central bank accumulate assets, it can accumulate assets in different forms. The main items were domestic credit, net domestic credit, and net foreign assets. And whenever central bank acquires assets, whatever the form, maybe the domestic or foreign, central bank has to purchase them by using the currency it prints as the monopoly. So what happens is, I'm just warming up the session, repeating what we did last time. Still, we did not start our lecture today. Then what happens is, the money available with the central bank goes out of the central bank to the circulation. That is CIC, currency in circulation. Then whenever central bank reduces assets, the liabilities also go down accordingly. So assets and liabilities are moving on the same direction, at the same magnitude. If central bank acquires domestic assets 100 rupees, central bank issues 100 rupees new cash, new legal tender to the system, liabilities also goes accordingly. Then what happens to those liabilities, we discuss, and when people keep it, it becomes currency, currency held by public. When they deposit money with the banking system, they become deposits held by public with the banking system. And last time we discussed, I think last time also we had this technical problem of my not presenting the slides, but both said that they have it. Then they understood, I think. Then when new money goes to the banking system, banks also do not keep it as it is. They start using it for its credit expansion process, credit creation process. There we have to understand the difference between the legal tender and the bank money. Whatever the money central bank issues is the legal tender. That is hard currency. That's why we say it's monetary base. So when commercial banks get this money in the form of deposit liabilities, I always like to use that word. We can't simply use the word deposits. The reason is this. And a layman can use the word deposits. I have this much of money in my deposit. That is from the layman's point of view. But if we are going to look at this from the bank's point of view, financial operations point of view, a commercial bank is a financial intermediary. It takes others' money in the form of deposits, so it has to pay them back. Therefore, they become commercial banks' deposit liabilities. Then, since these initial deposit liabilities are in the form of cash, they can start the process of creating credit, issuing checks. Actually, what you do is you allow your customers to write checks, And whenever you honor a check written by a customer, you allow the customer to create liquidity or the purchasing power, liquidity, by using the commercial bank's good name. Because as long as the commercial bank has issued it, as long as people accept those checks in their transaction of goods and services, that piece of paper, not the currency note printed by the central bank, but the piece of paper issued by the commercial bank in the form of a check and written by the customer and properly signed, that becomes a note of liquidity. If you write a check and buy some, let's say value is 100 rupees. If you buy something by writing a check by 100 rupees, so thereby the liquidity is equal to 100 rupees because it has facilitated, that 100 rupee check has facilitated you to buy goods and services. Similarly, if you pay with the currency note of 100 rupees, still you can get it. So then in terms of liquidity, there is no difference between the currency note and the check accepted by the other customer. Both have the liquidity. So 100 rupees represents the liquidity created by the central bank. 100 rupee check represents the liquidity created by the banking system. So then again, let's go back. Then once the central bank acquires assets of different forms, central bank liabilities increase at the same value because central bank issues currency to the circulation. Part of that currency is kept by people, balance go to banking system. The money that goes to people's hands stand there. They can use it for any transaction purposes, but the money that goes to the banking system starts being multiplied by way of credit creation by the commercial banking system. Okay, that we have to keep in mind before we start the lecture today. This is just for the benefit of those who did not participate in the last one, but I see there are around 11 participants, so good news. Again, I would like to invite all of you, anyone, don't worry about the language. Of course, I am not conversant in Tamil, but you can use either English or Sinhala and stop me, ask any question. So far, there is no comments also. Okay, let's start. Okay. So the lecture is monetary policy. First, we will try to understand the definition of the monetary policy. Now, these are the main areas that we are going to discuss today. Sometimes we may not be able to discuss all the topics because I don't want to make it a heavy lecture for you. I will try to make it as simple as possible. Therefore, it will take some time. Let's see. First, we'll try to understand what the definition of the monetary policy is. What is the monetary policy? How it has been defined. Then, what are the objectives of monetary policy? What is the purpose of central bank conducting the monetary policy? There are also, we are going to look at different levels of objectives. Then scope of monetary policy. What does it focus on? What does it focus on? Then the fourth one is monetary policy instruments. What are the instruments that the central bank uses in conducting the monetary policy? Then monetary transmission mechanism. That is a very, very important and also a little bit of a technical topic. That is basically how the impact of monetary policy is transmitted. Here the transmission word is there. How the impact of the monetary policy is transmitted to the real sector. Then we will go to limitations. Of course, in between, now these are the main areas. In between, we will discuss about what central bank has been doing under monetary policy. So sometimes we may go to a special topic, special lecture on the recent developments in the economy and the monetary sector, and also policies taken by the monetary board. That means what changes have been happening during the recent past with respect to monetary policy implementation by the central bank. Those things we will discuss in detail. Again, I want to emphasize, this lecture is more practical. Of course, we will have the theory and all the concepts will be discussed, but we will also blend that. We will blend this theory with the practical aspects so you can understand very clearly what is happening. Because central bank can influence each and every person in the society as long as they use money. So even an average person, very poor person in a remote area of Sri Lanka uses money. And also big conglomerate companies also use money. So there are big difference. Very small, very remote, and very big, the modern world. But both are using one single thing, that common thing, that is currency issued by the central bank. So if the central bank takes any action, that could affect the monetary sector, either directly or indirectly, either in the short term or the medium term or the long term, that will be felt by the users of currency. Of course, the impact will be different. So we can't expect the same impact to be on each and every person who is using currency. It depends on for what purpose they are using, what type of economic activities they are having, what type of links they have with the financial system. All those things matter. Okay, with that understanding, let's go to the first topic, definition of monetary policy. I'm going to read this slowly. You can see there are 4 definitions, but if you go to the internet, you can find many hundred definitions. But I picked up the major ones. Monetary policy refers to actions taken by central banks to effect monetary and other financial conditions in pursuit of broader objectives of sustainable growth of real output, higher employment, and price stability. This is New Palgrave Dictionary of Money and Finance. So this is a dictionary. This is a dictionary definition for monetary policy. And there's another definition. Let's look at. Monetary policy is the macroeconomic policy laid down by the central bank. Okay? It involves management of supply, money supply, and interest rate, and the demand side economic policy used by the government of a country to achieve macroeconomic objectives like inflation, consumption. That is the Economist definition. This is a magazine. Third one. Monetary policy, the demand side of economic policy. It is defining it a little bit further. Monetary policy, the demand side of economic policy, refers to the actions undertaken by a nation's central bank to control money supply to achieve macroeconomic goals that promote sustainable economic growth. Economic policy can be broadly classified as either expansionary or contractionary. That is a definition given by Investopedia. Okay, now we go to how the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has defined the monetary policy. Monetary policy is the process by which a central bank manages the supply and the cost of money in an economy, mainly with the view to achieve the macroeconomic objective of price stability. Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Okay, now we see, even though there are many different definitions, they have a common objective. What is that? Everywhere you can see now they refer to all the slides, all the definition slides refer to macroeconomic. So then monetary policy is a macroeconomic policy, basically macroeconomic policy. And also it is taken by the central bank. For what purpose? The final objective is macroeconomic, sustainable economic growth. And they all say sustainable economic growth, sustainable economic growth. And also they refers to another one, price stability. Price stability. Then here we have to understand now, from this point onwards, we are going to understand the links. Okay, what is the final objective? Then what are the objectives in between? We know central bank, this is a macroeconomic policy because it is going to affect the entire economy. It is the set of actions taken by the central bank. And also it influences two important things actually. Money and its price, quantity of money, and also price related to it. Usually we know, last time also, not the last time, 2 lectures back, it was a recording anyway, we discussed about one of the main responsibilities of the central bank is to maintain price stability. There we discuss there are 3 different prices central bank has to stabilize. Prices of goods and services. That is the price level reflected by the consumer price index. Now, you know, consumer price index reflect the prices of a good basket of goods and services. So it is mainly prices of goods and services. So when you say price stability and maintaining a low and stable inflation rate that we discussed earlier, they directly refer to prices of goods and services. There's another price when it comes to central bank price stability concept. Prices of financial services. Now, when you deposit money, as a depositor, you get interest. If you borrow money, you have to pay interest. That is your price. If you invest in a financial asset, you get a return. That is return based on rate of return is again related to the interest rate. So that means interest rate is also a price. Then central bank can influence that price. That is here the cost of funds. Now, if you go to, let's look at where it was in one of these slides, it was there. Price stability, financial conditions. The last one, supply and cost of money. Let's go to the central bank's definition. Monetary policy is the process by which a central bank manages the supply. Central bank manages supply. When you say manages, you increase it, you reduce it, you maintain at the same level. There's kind of management. Not only the supply is a quantity, and the cost of money, that is interest rate. So central bank can influence both. Later on, we will discuss how they do it. Okay. And also to fill the gap, to complete the sentence that we were discussing. So central bank has to stabilize the prices of goods and services. That is what the central bank is trying by controlling inflation. Central bank also has to stabilize the price of financial services or price of money. That is the interest rate. Central bank has to stabilize the interest rates. And also central bank has to be concerned about the stability of the exchange rate. What is the exchange rate? Exchange rate is the prices of foreign currencies in terms of domestic currency. Those are the 3 prices. Later on, we will discuss how all these things are linked. But I want to highlight here, when you say price of money, that is the interest rate. Price of foreign currency, exchange rate. Prices of goods and services, inflation rate. All these 3 variables, inflation rate, interest rate, exchange rate, represent a price of different dimensions. Okay. Now, then the final objective is sustainable growth. And central bank take actions to control either supply of money or cost of money. And also central bank is trying to maintain price stability, and also high unemployment. even though these are in the same line, when it comes to the practical side of it, we should know the link. Because when you say higher employment is related to the economic activities. When you have higher economic activities, it creates more employment opportunities. When you have more economic activities, it creates more goods and services. That is growth. Then we are going to understand how the central bank action influence all these variables, not at one shot, but in a sequence. We will discuss that. Okay. For that, we have to go to the next slide. But, if you have any question, you can ask me. Do you have any question before we reach the next slide? Do you have any question? Hello? Now we have 15 participants, 14 participants. Gerald, are you okay? Gerald?
Yes, sir.
Am I making it clear? Am I going fast? Too fast now? No?
No, it's fine.
Okay, clear, sir. Okay, Patum Johan. Okay, thank you, Buddha. Right, now let's go back to our slides. Objectives of monetary policy. Objectives can be examined under many aspects. Final objectives, intermediate objectives, immediate objectives. I have to mention here, because if you read 10 different articles or 10 different books on monetary policy, they will present them in different words and terms, but they all refer to the same. Then here I have put 3 different things. Final objective. What is the last final objective? And what is the immediate objective? What is in between? Again, we will, from time to time, we will have to revisit this because now at different points, we have to revert them back to these things. Therefore, I will be shifting here, swinging here and there to make it further clear. But again, I invite you to stop me and ask any question if you have. I know these topics may be new for some people, some of our students, so I don't mind repeating. I know it is a little bit of a technical subject. Okay, what is the final objective? Facilitate achieving sustainable growth. This is very important. Central bank cannot achieve sustainable growth. Then here we have to understand what is the sustainable growth. Sustainable growth. Growth we understand. Growth is something is growing. Here, what is the focus? Growth of what? Growth of the availability of goods and services. Why? Because whether you take monetary policy or the fiscal policy or any other policy, final object, all these are related to economic management. What are we managing? We are managing resources available in a society. So that those resources are owned by the nations, people. So they have the right to enjoy the maximum benefit from those resources and also make sure future generations also will have the same opportunity to enjoy them, because they are also part of the stakeholders in the resources. Then everybody wants to have that. And everybody wants to have a better standard of living. That is possible only if more goods and services are available with higher quality. Sometimes you can have more goods and services of low quality. Then your standard of living is not going to go up. But you should have more goods and services of high quality for everyone to feel comfortable, to feel that, okay, their standard of living is higher compared to earlier. That is growth. Growth means real growth of real output at growth of real output. Sustainable means what? Stable rate. Because 1 year it can grow at 10%, another year by 2%, another year by 4%. It is not stable. It is highly volatile, becoming volatile. Actually, some of you may have not been born by that time. If you take, it's a long away, no, none of you may have been born by that time. 1978, 1977 was a very important year for Sri Lanka, because open economic policies were introduced in 1977. In 1978, growth rate was 8.1%. Growth rate was 8.1%. Now this year, that I'm talking 1978, long ago. Then from time to time, it has been 2%, 5%, 6%, like that it has been. But now this year, 2020, people are predicting can be even negative. That means it is not stable. It can go up, go down, again volatile. But sustainable growth is something different. Sustainable growth means if the economy has been growing at a rate of, let's say, 5% or 6%, okay, 5 becoming 6 or becoming 4 is not that much of volatile. But if 5 becomes 10 and then again 2, it is not sustainable. Here, sustainable means, now let's say sustainable growth means availability of goods and services in real terms at a stable rate. And if the availability of goods and services are increasing at a stable rate, that is sustainable growth. Let's look at further. As I said, we will go very slow in this because each and every term is important in this discussion. Growth of real output at stable rate without creating imbalances in the overall economy. That is also very, very important, this concept. Without creating imbalances in the overall economy, that would facilitate the overall improvement in the standard of living of the nation. That is the final objective. Now, finally, overall, if there should be overall improvement in the standard of living of the nation. When you say nation, everybody. Maybe one segment of the society may enjoy, others will suffer. That is not the case. If the entire society is enjoying a higher standard of living, that is the final objective. And here, very important point is there. Again, let me repeat it again. Facilitate achieving sustainable growth. That means growth of real output at stable rate without creating imbalances in the overall economy. Now, what is that? How? There are many ways of achieving growth. If you want to increase the growth in a particular year, you can cut forest and get timber and export, and you can earn money. But what has happened? That will create problems in the ecosystem, and that will affect the future growth prospects with a deterioration of the environment. So that's not possible. And in 1 year, sometimes central bank can print money and create more economic activities, but next year there will be inflation. That is a problem. And sometimes government can borrow heavily and increase the availability of goods and services. People will enjoy it. But if the government borrows, it creates government debt. The debt is a liability again. Debt has to be paid back next year, and the following years, it will be a problem. Now here, the particular sustainable growth that we are referring here is not with those kind of things. That should not, whatever the stable growth rate that the society achieves should be without creating any imbalances in the overall economy. Then when it comes to this point, somebody can ask, okay, does that mean that the government should never borrow? No, that doesn't mean that. So you can borrow, but the borrowings or the public debt should be manageable. If it has ballooned to a level of unmanageable level, then there is imbalance. And also we know that if we look at if you look at the macroeconomy, overall macroeconomy, you may have studied this under economics at the certificate level. If you take Sri Lankan balance of payment, we have been importing more goods and services than exporting, thereby experiencing a huge deficit in the trade account. So you can import goods, let people eat, and or wear and all those things, but then people can feel, okay, we are better off. But if they are not financed by the growth of exports, by earning foreign exchange, then you have to borrow. Borrowing again create a problem because borrowing is a liability. So government can borrow. We can borrow from the external sector by importing more than exporting. That is creating a budget. There's a trade deficit. That is an imbalance. You can print more money and create then that will create inflation. That is an imbalance. Then the government can spend more without having a proper tax collection. That is again an imbalance. So here this sustainable growth means not the growth achieved in those means. That growth has to be achieved with a overall improvement in the economy in all aspects. There should not be high inflation, volatile inflation, and there should not be unmanageable trade deficit, balance of payment deficit, unmanageable government budget, like those things. Okay, then again here facilitating. Final objective to facilitate, again not to achieve, because you create an environment for people to plan and execute those plans so that they can create employment opportunities. They can create income generating activities that will create employment opportunities that will make everybody comfortable and economy will experience. Central bank can only facilitate that final objective. Okay, if that is the final one, what is the in-between one? Intermediate. Facilitate creation of more income generating opportunities. It is there. Facilitate creation of more income generating opportunities. Then influence economic agents with respect to consumption and investment. Influence, I'm sorry, we have to correct this little bit. Influence economic agents. Influence, let me write you correctly. Influence the expectations of economic agent, influence the expectations of economic agent with respect to their investment and consumption and investment plans, actually. Plans. Okay, what is this? Then facilitate creating more income generating activities. We can understand if you create a business friendly environment. If business people are confident that prevailing environment is conducive for their their business activities, and also future is also likely to be very stable for them, then they will start investing and creating more income generating activities that can create employment opportunities. So we have to facilitate it. Then what is the other one? Of course, even though I have put them as separate ones, they are linked. Influence expectations of economic agents with respect to consumption and investment plans. Okay, let's look at relating this to our own. If I ask from our participants, our students in this lecture, why are you following this course? If I ask a simple question, not referring to the central banking, but referring to DABF, because central banking is the subject under DABF. If I ask, why do you follow this? Why do you follow this? Some of you may say, okay, we want to get this qualification because they are considered as qualification for us to have promotions in the central bank, not in our bank, because that is now banks add some marks for those who have passed this, obtained this qualification. Some of them may say, okay, I want to have this qualification. That will recognize my ability and also I will have a more commanding position in the labor market. Now, even in your office, if you are working in a bank, there's an internal labor market and external labor market. External labor market is out of your bank. Internal means inside the bank, because there may be competition among employees, among your colleagues for promotions, for training programs. So there's a kind of a labor market, internal labor market in a small scale. Outside also, and also if you have obtained these qualifications, if these qualifications have improved your ability to function as a very effective banker, you may have a chance of going to another bank. So you are shifting from this internal, and there will be some other people also trying to grab that employment opportunity in that bank. So there's the external labor market. Then you will have a chance of shifting there. Sometimes there may be an opportunity outside the banking system, but related to the financial system, you may have an opportunity there. That's another segment of the labor market. Okay, if this qualification, DABF qualification, enables you to have a sound, commanding position in the labor market, whether irrespective of that being an internal labor market or external labor market, then you can say, okay, I am following this course for that. Okay, you are getting a promotion inside, or you are getting a better, higher position outside. What is the final outcome? You will have a higher cash flow. If you are going to get a higher income, then you are going to have higher cash flow coming in. That is, your pocket will be bigger compared to earlier. What will happen? You feel comfortable. If you have a better pocket, of course, you can borrow and have a better pocket, but since when you start feeling that you have to pay it back, okay, you can't enjoy that in the feeling of having more money. But if you have a better job, if that better job offers you higher salary and all other perks, then if you are sure that, okay, you will enjoy those benefits continuously in the future as well, you feel comfortable. Okay, that is your final objective. What does that mean? You will have the command over more goods and services of high quality with this. What has happened? As a student or as an employee in the banking system, following this course is part of your investment plan. What are you investing in? You are investing in human capital. You are investing in human capital. The same way a person can plan for constructing a house for his own. We know constructing a house for business purposes is an investment. Constructing a house for your own use is part of consumption, consumer durables. Same way, people can plan. If they think, okay, they have a better situation now, that better situation will prevail in the future as well. If he is living in a small house with limited facilities, he can plan for a bigger house with better facilities, high quality facilities. That is part of his consumption plan. And now we saw your investment plan. Okay, central bank can influence. Now all those things are what? Those are expectations. You expect to be a commanding person in the banking sector. That is your expectation. A person planning to. Now I don't know whether you have constructed your own houses or planning for those things. Okay, what is the first thing? If you are going to have, now suppose that you are married and you and your spouse are planning to construct a house. If the bank provides you with a loan, before applying for the loan, you have to have a plan. And plan comes with what? Plans come with your dreams. You have been dreaming for a house for some time, so you start executing that dream. Sometimes certain dreams may not be realized, because sometimes you may start building a house that cannot be completed with the loan facility available. Therefore, you start with big, but then you cut them short depending on the facility and all those things. But anyway, all those things are related to expectations. So central bank can influence those expectations. Those are intermediate. Final objective is standard of living. For that to happen, now even though I have taken examples relating to individuals, we have to apply this to the entire economy. If overall economic environment is such that all investors and consumers feel comfortable about the current situation and more hopeful about the future situation, and if they are certain it is possible, then they will start planning. When they start planning, then their expectations influence that. And also when they execute those plans, it creates more employment opportunities for other people as well. Then everybody's income will go up. If there was some unemployment will go down, employment will go up. Finally, as a whole, society will have a better standard of living. Understand? Okay. Then the immediate, we have the final, we have the intermediate, we have the immediate run. Provide forward guidance to economic agents to plan their activities with respect to consumption and investment as per the expectation and execute plans. Okay, here central bank provide forward guidance. I am repeating the same, but here what is happening? Central bank provide forward guidance. Okay, what is forward guidance? Now you may remember last time also I took the same example. If you remember a policeman at a junction directing vehicles, they say, okay, stop, turn to the right, turn to the left, and come forward. What are those? All those are forward guidance. Because when you say come forward, you will see what is here after coming forward only. The policeman is giving that clearance if the road is clear. And also policeman will stop this flow of vehicles and ask you to turn this way. So there won't be any disturbance from this side. That is forward guidance. Central bank also does something like that. How it does, we will look at. Then create an environment of price stability by way of managing the level of liquidity and interest rate. Okay. Now let's look at the last one. Creating an environment of price stability by way of managing the level of liquidity and interest rate. This is where we have to stop. So we have to start. This is where we have to start our discussion. Create an environment of price stability. Okay, this we have to discuss a little bit in detail. What is price stability? Earlier also we discussed price stability is defined as not maintaining the same price. Last time also we discussed price stability means if you had some price in 2019, if you have the same price in 2020, price stability, price is stable. But here, be very careful. Price stability does not mean maintaining the same price. If you have the same price, if you take a basket of prices of basket of goods and services, CCPI, if CCPI was 100 in 2019, and if it is also 100 in 2020, price value of the price index is the same, there is no change, inflation is zero. No, here it does not mean. Price stability does not mean maintaining zero inflation. And last time we have somewhere in your notes you can find price stability means maintaining low and stable rate of inflation that has to be predictable, and also that does not interfere with the plans, with the expectations of consumers, producers and investors with respect to their plans and execution of those plans with confidence. That's what you said. You can later on you can read. Important thing is inflation rate should be stable. There can be some inflation. I am not going to the high level macroeconomics and monetary economics here, because then there's a question whether the inflation rate should be stable or whether we should have zero inflation, and what is the risk of having zero inflation if they are in risk. Those things are there, but here we are not going to discuss. They are a little bit upper level. We don't need to, but if you are interested in, you can read all those things. I'm just mentioning these things for to arouse your curiosity. Here we have to understand what is the importance of maintaining stable inflation rate. I asked this question in a last lecture, in a future recording lecture also. Let me ask the same thing now. Whether you are at home or whether you are in the office, whether you are having your own business or whatever, there are two important things that everybody has to be concerned about. What is that? Cash flow. There is cash inflow, your income, cash outflow, your expenditure. For a business organization, revenue, cash inflow, expenditure, cash outflow. And if you take a bank, banks earn interest by lending, revenue. Banks have to pay on deposits, outflow. Net is your interest rate margin. Interest margin makes you, the business organization, to enjoy profits. That will enable you to offer higher salaries for your employees and also expand your business activities and promote your qualities of your services. Everything, starting from a housewife in a kitchen to a big organization, everybody has one common problem, common concern. The same way that everybody uses money, we discussed that earlier, irrespective of whether they are poor people in rural areas or very rich people and business enterprises in urban areas, they all use money, common. The same way, whether you are a housewife of a very poor family or a finance manager of a big company, both have to look at one thing. What is the nature of your cash flows? Okay, whether you are getting cash inflows or outflows, whether the final situation, net cash position is plus, minus, or stable. Because if you are earning more than expenditure, your net cash position is increasing. If you are spending more than you earn, then you are borrowing. Your cash position is going down. If you just manage your income and expenditure, you are stable. Everybody has this cash flow. Okay. When we refer this price stability concept to our cash flow management, I would like to suggest you to think of a plan. You are going to construct a house. Okay. When you plan to construct a house, even for this course, we can do it. I mean, example, you can take, okay, your expenditure on this course, but I would like to go for the construction of house. When you get a plan, immediately the architect will give you this estimate. Okay, this is the plan. These are the number of floors, number of rooms, number of bathrooms, number of all those facilities are there. Okay, it will cost this much. Quantity survey. They will, okay, you need this much of bricks, sand, and all those things. It will cost you this much. Okay, what is this? This is about the future cash outflow you will have to face in the process of constructing a house. Cash outflow. Okay, let's start your business. When you start your business, you can say, okay, initial investment on capital is this much, and working capital is this much, and saturated period will be this much. It will take at least 2 years for you to start generating income sufficient to meet the expenses. And after 3rd year, you will have higher cash flow coming in than expenditure. And you will have to upgrade your services after 5 years' time. then there will be more cash outflow, but you can penetrate into higher markets, then cash inflow. What are these? All these are future cash flows. Okay. Volume of cash depends on what? Suppose that you are a baker, for example. If you are a baker, your revenue will depend on the number of breads you sell and also into the price you sell. So your revenue will depend on price and the quantity. Let's look at the cost. The cost on labor will depend on number of people you hire and the price you pay to them, their wages. Then if you are dealing with future, you have to project cash flow in the future because it's not the current. You start your business today and the income is going to come in the future. So it is about future. Then the future prices will matter, not the current prices. Current prices will matter for your expenditure on constructing the business, investing in the business. But income will depend on future prices, whether it is expenditure or income. Now, usually, when it comes to construction of a house, they say at least you have to have a adjustment of plus, not minus actually. Sometimes if the budget, the initial budget for the house, constructing house is, let's say 50 million. These days 50 million is nothing when it comes to construction of a house. 50 million. Sorry, not 55, because 15 is a good big amount. 5 million. 5 million. The architect will say, okay, it can be even 6 million. That is 20% increase, because we don't know. Once you start constructing house, the prices of sand can go up, bricks can go up, cement can go up, and metal can go up, and the wages can go up. Then all those things will depend on the prices not prevailing today, prices in the future. That's why the architects will normally say, okay, 5 million, but can be 6 million, even 7 million, depending on how long it will take for you to construct the house, complete the house, and also what will happen to the prices in the future. So you have to have an idea about the prices in the future when you apply for the loan. And they will ask, okay, how much will it cost? How much are you going to put from your own pocket? And how much is bank is going to finance at what stages? You know those things. Then if you are not confident, that, okay, prices may go up, maybe 5%. If prices are going to go up by 20%, you have to think not once, not twice, not thrice, many times, whether to start or not. Okay, prices can go up, I can still manage. Then price stability is important. Now, if the historical data tells you prices of items in the construction sector has been rising at a rate of 2% every year, that means there are no fluctuations. If the prices have been rising at a rate of 2% every year, means what? The inflation rate for items in the construction sector has been 2%. That means prices have been rising. 100 rupees, 102 rupees, then 2% of that, 2% of that. Prices have been rising. That means there have been inflation. But the rate of price increase has been 2%. Okay, you can manage it. But if the prices are going up by 20%, 30%, you can't manage your project. Then you will not see the results of your project. You cannot realize your expectations. You are not confident of completing the project. That's why I say, see, execute such plans with confidence. Plans are always for the future. Plans are based on expectations. And plans should be able to execute them with confidence. Okay, for that to happen, there should be price stability. Prices can go up, but prices can go up at a predictable rate. Now, whether you are constructing a house, whether you are starting a bakery, whether you are we are going to start a big business, all these have the cash flows. The amount of cash flow depends on the quantity and the price. Quantity you can control. Okay, I'm going to sell 100 breads. I'm going to sell 100 breads. That you can control. But the prices depend on the economic conditions out there in the market where you don't have a control over. You have to take the market prices. Then if there are factors that will affect the price changes, you can't do it. Then we are digging into where can the central bank address this? Can the central bank make sure, or at least create an environment where people can feel, okay, prices are rising, but not at a highly volatile rate. Now here, create an environment of price stability means central bank has to do it. Central bank is going to do it. Once central bank create this environment of price stability, that will make you feel comfortable. Whether you are a student, whether you are a businessman, whether even you are a housewife. Now look at, this is a very simple example. Let's look at, I don't mind spending some time on this because it's very important. When a housewife goes for shopping, not a supermarket, they go to Polar. When they go to Polar, what do they take? They take sacks, bags, and also they take money. Then ask from any housewife, if you are also a housewife or if you are also a family member who buys things for your household, before leaving the house, not for every item, you have some item. Okay, I have to buy, today I need to buy 5 kilograms of rice and 1 kilogram of potatoes, 1 kilogram of onion, and you have a plan for that. Those are the quantities. Then you also have inner mind. In your inner mind, you have the prices. Okay, last week prices were this much. This year also prices maybe even little higher or lower. Then you check your pocket whether you have sufficient cash to purchase this sack of goods and services that you are planning to buy from Polar. You have that. That means your inner mind says, okay, these are the possible prices that could prevail in the market even before you go to the market. Because this is for the future, immediate future. Then when you go to the market, if the prices have doubled, the sack of goods and services, the basket of goods and services that you were planning to buy, you cannot do it. Then you don't feel comfortable. But if the prices can go up and down a little bit, but if the prices are somewhat similar to the prices that prevailed last week, you don't have any problem. Okay, this is what we mean by price stability. It can apply to a housewife planning to buy goods and services, from a Polar. It can apply to a student following a DBF course. It can apply to an investment, the business person producing bread. It can apply to a big organization which is planning to have a, let's say, factory of something. Everybody faces this problem of having some idea about possible prices to prevail in the future that has to be predicted. If those prices are not predictable, you cannot plan. If you cannot plan, you cannot execute your dreams, expectations. Now we are going to look at how can the central bank do it? How can the central bank maintain price stability? I hope that you understood. Okay, let's again go back to our discussion. And any questions up to now? Nageshwaran? Gerald? Is everything clear? No, so Gerald says no. Okay. Tell me what are the areas that you are not clear about. Gerald, what point should I explain again? Hello? Okay. Apparently it is clear. Okay. Jonita Vincent. Nageshwaran, Naguleshwaran. Any comment, Puta? Hello? Clear, sir. Okay. Okay, but don't worry. Now, some points may not be clear, but we will shift here and there. Then it will be. I'll summarize. Then it will be clear. But let's go back to our lecture. Next slide. Scope of monetary policy. Now, I said the central bank is trying to create price stability, which means stable, predictable rate of inflation, so that people, as consumers, producers, or investors, can have some idea about the possible prices to prevail in the future. Therefore, they can plan their they can plan according to their expectations and execute them with confidence. That's what we said. Okay, central bank is going to create that environment. That is price stability, creating an environment of price stability. Then here we have another aspect on this side. Monetary policy is identified as the demand management policy. How can the central bank do it? How can the central bank create price stability? From which side? Demand management policy, and it focuses on managing the components of the aggregate demand. Okay, here let's look at the next explanation there. Sometimes I read without reading, then already I have put all those things. Therefore, repetition is always better. We know. Two sides of the economy are aggregate demand side and aggregate supply side. Any economy has aggregate demand side, aggregate supply side. You may have studied this under your economic subject, excuse me, under certificate, because there you have microeconomic and macroeconomic. There you have aggregate demand, aggregate supply, those things. I know that you study ISLM. For you to construct ISLM, especially IS curve, you have to look at aggregate demand side, aggregate supply side of the economy. So you are familiar with this. The monetary policy is like monetary policy. This is it is about demand management policy. That means central bank cannot influence the aggregate supply side. That is what it means. Economy has two sides: aggregate demand side, aggregate supply side, and also we know the meaning of aggregate, taking everything together. If you take bread, there is only one component. If you take all goods and services, that is aggregate, complete basket. Supply is also like that. If you take coconut, supply of coconut, but if you take supply of all goods and services, demand for all goods and services, demand for all supplies, supply of all goods and services, aggregate demand, aggregate supply. Central bank cannot, the monetary policy cannot influence the aggregate supply side. It can influence only the aggregate demand side. Therefore, monetary policy is identified as a demand management policy. Okay, let me design a question at this point. If you are asked, suppose that the examiner gives you a sentence like this: monetary policy is identified as demand management policy. Do you agree with this statement? If so, why? There can be a question like this. Then we should know the distinction between what is aggregate demand, what is aggregate supply, and whether the central bank, through its monetary policy, is going to influence the aggregate demand side or the aggregate supply side. If central bank has no any control whatsoever on the supply side, but has significant control over aggregate demand side, then we can say monetary policy is a demand management policy. Clear? Okay. Then if it is the demand side, we are going to look at the components of demand. Component of an AD. AD means aggregate demand of it should be of an open economy. Please correct that. Of an open economy. The components of AD in an open economy, CIGXM. You know these things, but anyway, let me explain them. C means consumption expenditure by households. If you remember circular flow of income under your macroeconomic class, in your economic class under macroeconomics, circular flow of income, there we have households, we have the government, we have the firms, we have the external sector. And circular flow of income means households sell their goods and services to firms to produce goods and services, they pay for that. That becomes their income. Once they get income, they can spend on goods and services produced by firms, that becomes their consumption expenditure. And also they can pay taxes, those taxes become government revenue. And also households can save, that becomes their savings. Those savings, you all are in the banking sector, you can mobilize those savings. Now, if I am a household, if our calling is a business person, if I earn 100 rupees and save 100, pay taxes of 10 rupees and spend 80 rupees on goods and services and save 10 rupees, if Kavinda is the person who is producing these goods and services, when I buy goods and services from him for 80 rupees, he will get only 80 rupees from me because I have saved 10 rupees. I also have paid 10 rupees to the government, right? Okay, now compared to the earlier situation, the Kavinda is short of 20 rupees. Then if I have saved 10 rupees, if banks can grab this, if bank can collect this 10 rupees, my 10 rupees as deposit liabilities, lend the same to Kavinda, it becomes Kavinda's investment expenditure. And if the government spend that 10 rupees of tax revenue to buy goods and services from firms, again, that money also goes there. Now, I just reminded this is what you have studied under your economic subject at the certificate level, circular flow of income. So, for example, take our practical side of it. Every day we go to office. You go to office, at the end of the month, the bank pays you. Then once you get your salary, you start spending on goods and services. What you have done is you have sold your labor. Actually, labor is defined as the physical and mental capacity of humans that can be used to produce goods and services. So as a lecturer, I am selling my labor. And there are a set of masons working, I see out there, they are selling their labor. But the difference is I am selling my mental part of it. Because now both physical and mental capacity, laborers sell most of their physical part of it. Lecturers like us sell most of our mental part of it, but it is labor. In the bank also, you go and work because you have the understanding about the working environment in the bank and how to accept checks, how to check checks, and how to deposit checks, and also how to check loan application. And once a customer comes to withdraw money, how to check the slip and how to check the balance through the computer. And if it is exceeding the capacity, what payment should be referred to your higher officer. Anybody can't do it now because you are trained for that. You also have that mental capacity to function like that. Like that, every day we are selling our labor. after selling our labor for 1 month, we get paid in terms of cash, rupees. Then again, earlier we were sellers of labor. After getting that money in the pocket, you start paying, buy goods and services. That is, you buy food, and there are so many things. There is no need. Then what happens? That money comes to us. That money again goes to some people, and again finally it can circulate. It's like blood circulation system. Used blood comes here, again it is circulated. Again it goes like that. So here we have a blood circulation system. The same way, an economy has circular flow of income. My expenditure is your income. Your expenditure is somebody else's income. So when the whole society is linked with different types of economic transactions, and one person's payment becomes other person's revenue, that person's payment becomes some other person's revenue. It goes like that. That's circular flow of income. So under circular flow of income, you study this. One component of the aggregate demand is households' consumption on goods and services. The other component is investment expenditure by firms. G is government expenditure on goods and services, because we know government, again, you may have studied the importance of a government under your economics. Government is a facilitator for people to do their economic, not only economic, their activities. So the government collect taxes and spend on that. Export is the income generation for the country. Import is cash outflow from the country. So those are the main components. C plus I plus G is the closed economy. When you have X minus M, then it becomes open economy. All these things are the components of aggregate demand. Then when you say demand management policies, we can ask a fair question, very sensible question. Is the central bank, through its monetary policy, going to influence all these 5 components? Can central bank influence C, I, G, X, and M? The answer is no. Why? Central bank cannot influence government expenditure, because government expenditure depends on the government policies, where the central bank does not have any control over. How about exports? How about exports? Exports mostly depend on foreigners' income, exchange rate, foreign prices. Central bank cannot influence them directly. Imports also depend on the exchange rate, prices, and all those things. Of course, to some extent, central bank can influence, but not directly. Here we are going to take what are the components that central bank can influence directly. 2 components is the consumption expenditure by households and investment expenditure by firms. Okay, here we can say components of AD that monetary policy can influence. Components of AD, components of aggregate demand that monetary policy can influence are C and I. Then remember, somebody can raise another question from here. Let me articulate the possible question. Don't misunderstand. All these will come as questions in your paper. But somebody can design a question from this point like this. Central bank, okay, the monetary policy is considered as the demand management policy, indicating that the central bank can influence the aggregate demand. Components of aggregate demand are C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Does that mean central bank can influence all these components of aggregate demand with the equal intensity? Somebody can raise that question. It is asking, because when you say demand management policies, aggregate demand side has 5 components. Can the central bank influence all these? The clear answer is no. There are only some components that the central bank can influence. Those 2 components are mainly the consumption expenditure by households and investment expenditure by firms. That's the answer, right? And also, this is not related to this question, but when you answer a question, because by now we may have marked hundreds of thousands of answer scripts, not only for the IBSL courses, but for other courses as university and all that. The one main problem that we have observed, this is just an advice for you as students who are preparing for the exam. Read the question very carefully and understand what they are asking for, and also answer the question directly to the point. Now, in this case, let me again repeat the articulated question that we had. Monetary policy is considered to be a demand management policy. Aggregate indicating that, highlighting that the central bank influences the aggregate demand side of the economy through monetary policy. The aggregate demand has 5 components in an open economy: C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Does that mean central bank can influence all these 5 components equally or at the equal intensity? That's the question. We can simply say central bank can influence directly only the consumption expenditure by households and investment expenditure by firms. Those 2 components are in the aggregate demand. Since central bank can influence C and I through monetary policy, central bank policy is considered as demand management policy. That's more than enough. But maybe few words, but very rich sentence, directly to the point. Okay, then they can ask, okay, explain how central bank does it. Those things, those are secondary. Like this discussion in the future also, whenever we discuss a particular concept, particular theory, we also articulate a question then and there and discuss. Then you will be familiar with that skill also you have to develop over time. Okay, now we go further. Consumption function. After indicating that the aggregate demand, the only 2 components, consumption expenditure and investment expenditure of aggregate demand, the monetary policy can influence. Now we are going to go to the little bit details of C and I. Consumption function. Consumption function is given little bit of mathematical expression is there. C stand for consumption, F stand for function. Determinants are given in the brackets. Okay. Now, what are the determinants of consumption? Again, when we study a topic like this, you can simply apply it to your own. Okay, if you are going to increase your consumption, what are the factors that will affect you? If you have a bigger pocket, if you have high income, now good example, now you know that compared to other months, in the month of December and the month of April, you get your bonus. I hope, or at least by the end of the year, you get your bonus. Once you get the bonus, your pocket size of your pocket is a little higher than other months. Naturally, it tends to influence you to have a little bit of higher consumption. You can even have a party with your friends. Having a party is spending more. So D stands for disposable income. When your income is higher, you tend to spend more on consumption. Interest is again here. Let me before going to other variables, let's go to investment function also. Investment expenditure is also interest rate, expectation, future income. Okay, here we have interest rate. Here also we have interest rate. Interest rate. Apparently, and for both consumption and investment, interest rate is a common determinant. Okay, we can see something here. Then disposable income, wealth is the wealth. There is no need to explain, no. But I know some, especially young people, if their parents are employed, especially, they can construct houses and they can buy land and all those things. They can leave it for their children. So in addition to their income from their employment, if they have little bit higher wealth, then they tend to spend more. Higher wealth means higher consumption expenditure. Higher income means higher consumption expenditure. These expectations. We all dream. So usually people tend to dream. So if your expectations are high, you tend to consume more. Sometimes if you expect to consume more in the future, but less in the current period by saving, okay, if the expectations are for higher consumption in the future, you will consume less in this period. If the expectations are for higher consumption in the current period, you consume more in this period. And then this is present environment. This is policy environment. This is policy environment. Recently, you saw in the future now, very recently you may see, when a government changes, it doesn't matter which government. This is nothing to do with politics. This whatever the government gives, the government introduces some policies. Those policies can make people to be a little bit comfortable or worrisome. If it is comfortable, they tend to consume more. If they think, okay, the situation is going to deteriorate, they tend to spend less. So that is policy environment. PENV. If you can, I can also write here, but to save space, I can cite policy. You also can do it if you want. Policy environment. Here also policy environment, but here you have to be careful. Policy environment. Here the policy environment for consumers. Policy environment that affect consumers. This is policy environment that affect investors. So it can't be the same, because sometimes the government can take decisions to encourage the business people and start taxing households income. In that case, that policy can positively affect the business people, can negatively affect households, but it's a policy environment. Okay, now let's go to the investment. X means here also we have expectations. Here also business people can have expectations. Is business people, this subject is so linked to so many other subjects. I may have to shift here and there just to make you feel comfortable. I mean, to give you a complete set of information in this subject. Therefore, you have to excuse me for shifting here and there, because whenever there is something relevant, I do that. Expectations. So I forgot. Okay. Yeah, expectations. Now, people take decisions, as you said earlier, based on expectations. If people think this is not a time to start business, now these days, I know that all of you are doing DABF, Diploma in Banking and Finance. When you come to that stage, you have been in the banking sector for some time. Then you start feeling what is going on in the banking sector. Now these days, there's a big issue. Even those who are reading newspapers can understand there's a big issue. Even though the central bank has cut interest rate and encouraged banks to lend, because the liquidity situation has increased significantly because the central bank policy is taken in the near future, in the near past, then recent past, the credit expansion is not there. Credit is not picking up. Then they say the business environment is very uncertain. Since the business environment is very uncertain, people have, that is whether they are consumers or the investors, they have, I mean, they have attitude of wait and see. Okay, let's wait until this COVID pandemic is over. Let's wait until the government, this election is over, and how the government is going to manage, who is going to have the power, and whether the current government has 1/2/3, and whether the president will have more comfortable environment. There are so many things. This is nothing to do with politics, but this is simply economics. So people are thinking. That is, they have expectations. If they expect a worse situation to come, they become very cautious at this point, and their investment will be held up. People will not consume. Now, I invite you also to do it. When you meet people, business people or average people, you can simply ask, okay, how is these days? Business people will say, okay, that's not business. Business, then is business ne. Then householding යවොත් දැන් මොකද හිතාගෙන ගේ හදන්න ඒව මේ දවස්වල පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න ඕන මොකද මොනවද විද්දන්නේ ඒ හින්දා පොඩ්ඩක් හොයලා බලන්න ඕන ඒ වගේ people have different. Now see, for example, these days, because since the interest rates have gone down, some people are benefiting because interest rates are low. Borrowers can benefit, and investors also can borrow at a low cost. But those people who have funds in the form of deposits, and if they have been living on interest income, they are affected. Therefore, their expectations are negative, and the business people's expectations are positive. Like that, expectations also can drive people whether to consume more or whether to consume less, whether to invest more, whether to invest less. So the expectation are those things. Now, the last point, interest rate. Okay, this is YF. YF is forward. This is disposable income. When it comes to consumers, okay, I am going slow. You can take a note on this. This YD is disposable income of households. The income available for them to spend after paying taxes. That is disposable income. Y minus D. YD means Y minus T. Y is the income they earn. T is the taxes they have to pay. When you deduct tax liabilities from their income, it becomes disposable income. This why is that. This is different. This is future income. Future overall income of the economy. Right? Here I have to touch little bit. About if you are a frequent reader of newspapers and all those things, you may have seen central bank publishes from time to time business confidence survey. Statistics department of the central bank conducts surveys. One survey they conduct is business confidence survey, because they interview business people after selecting them on random basis and ask questions from them. What they feel about the businesses at the current period. How do they feel? Are they making losses, or are they experiencing difficulties or comfortable situations? What do they think about the immediate future? Whether they think that the business environment will improve, deteriorate, or remain stable. What do they think about the medium term? Those are business confidence surveys, right? Okay, then people have different ideas about what the possible environment. Now, what is the possible environment now? What is the possible environment in the future? The same way, that gives sense what they think about the future, foreseeable future. And also, there is another index that the central bank publishes. Again, the statistics department. When we discuss about the functions of the department, we said they also conduct purchasing managers index. Actually, purchasing managers are you can find them in big organizations because they have to purchase. If you are a the purchasing manager of a factory, you have to buy inputs, because we know you cannot buy input today and produce tomorrow. If your organization is big, you have to have a stock of inputs, and after producing, you have a stock of final products. Then you have to have a stock manager. The stock manager can see whether then usually you maintain a particular level of stock every year. I mean, every time you have to have, okay, stock sufficient for 3 months of sales. If that is your target, then the stocks level goes down below 3 months. Then the store manager feels, okay, goods are moving faster. Then he can communicate it to the production manager. Apparently, the goods are moving faster. You have to expedite the production process. When the production manager gets that information, production manager has to check with the store manager of inputs whether sufficient stocks are available for them to expedite the production process. Clear? Then this purchasing manager will buy inputs only if he get the signal from other sources. Okay, in the future we may need more inputs, therefore they purchase more. Why? Goods are moving faster, inputs have to be released at a faster rate, then they have to purchase more. Purchasing is not like buying a coconut from a market. There are procurement policies you have to follow, and they have to call for tenders and assess the tenders and purchase accordingly. And also, if you are importing, you can place the orders today. It will take sometimes 2 to 3 months for the goods to be delivered. Then what he thinks, this purchasing manager thinks, what he does, what he plans to do, reflects possible changes to come in the future. Now, if the purchasing managers are slowing down their purchases, that means, okay, gloomy environment is going to come. If the purchasing managers are buying at a fast rate, okay, good days are going to come. So all those things are reflected, this YF, future income. This is very interesting. You may feel, okay, interesting to say, but difficult to remember. Like, no. Just try to understand, then it will be easy. So the investors will do like that. Among all these things, I am going to isolate this variable, this single variable, interest rate, and this interest rate. Here the interest rates are. Then again, we can ask, before going there, we can ask a question. Okay, now we understood central bank through the monetary policy is trying to influence the aggregate demand side. That's why it is known as demand management policy. Then we can further say, even though the aggregate demand side has 5 components, central bank cannot influence these 3 components. It can influence only these 2 components. Then we further expanded that this component has many determinants. This component also has many determinants. Then we can ask, can the central bank influence all the determinants of consumption? Can the central bank influence all the determinants of investment? The clear answer is no. Because there are some variables you cannot influence. Policy environment is something real, because then usually policies are now politicians are identified as lawmakers, because they are the people who make economic plans. Of course, there are many people who advise them. Finally, they have to take decisions in the parliament. So the policy environment depends on what the politicians think, how they are influenced, what their plans are. So policy environment is not controllable by the central bank. It is coming from outside. Central bank can do it. And the wealth is also central bank cannot influence directly. and this future and disposable income, those things central bank cannot. Expectation to some extent central bank influence, but not directly. But if you take this one single variable, that is interest rate, that central bank can influence. Now you can see now gradually we are making it more and more micro. Earlier aggregate demand, then only two components of aggregate demand, C and I, then many variables, many determinants of C and Y, from there interest rate. We have to discuss this a little bit. What is the interest rate? Interest rate is basically the price of financial services. Price of financial services. Why price? And also it has many dimensions. If you want, I can write it here. I, simple I has many dimensions. Sorry, it's many dimensions. You have to excuse me because for savers it is different and borrowers. There are borrowers. There are investors. Investors in financial assets. So borrowers is one dimension. Sorry, saver. The interest rate for savers is different from the interest rate for borrowers. That is again different from the interest rate related to the financial assets. So likewise, there are different dimensions. The question is then how can the central bank influence these different dimensions associated with the interest rate? Let me check whether we have put that in the next slide, then I don't have to repeat it again. Oh, no, it is okay. It will come late, but here I am going to clarify. Here we have to understand the difference between policy interest rate and market interest rate. It will come there later. Don't worry. Don't worry if you don't understand at this point. When you take interest rate has different dimension, and also if you take the short-term interest rate, medium-term interest rate, long-term interest rate, and also interest rates can vary according to the risk level. There are different dimensions of risk. Like usually a financial system has a spectrum of interest rates. Spectrum is pokura. Interest rate policy polyanupata pokura. Why? Different the savers, borrowers, and investors. There can be high risk, low risk situations. Again, interest rates are different. Again, there can be short term, medium term, long term, different interest rates. So it is a bunch of interest rates. All those are what? All those are coming under one single basket of market interest rates, because financial services industry, whether they are banks or non-bank financial institutions, all they are providing financial services. Those services are traded. When those services are traded, they have to charge a price. The price of those services is the interest rate. So it has different dimensions. And the question is, what is the link between the central bank monetary policy and all these interest rate which affect investment and consumption, that affect aggregate demand, influencing the objective of price stability. That's what we have to understand. Policy interest rates and market interest rates are linked. Hopefully by now you may have studied again this relationship under survey of financial services, but here we can discuss. There's a very close relationship between policy interest rate and market interest rate. All these are market interest rates, and policy interest rates are decided by the central bank. This is the point. Central bank, and remember we said central bank can influence either quantity of money or price of money. There, the price of money is the interest rate. When the central bank influences that price, that means this price. Market interest rates. How the central bank can do it, we will discuss in the next slide. Let me go back to our audience and ask whether they have any questions. What is your response? Johan? Hello? Gerald? Naguleshwaran? Understood. Okay. Others also, I hope that they also have understood. Okay. Now then, if you all are comfortable about this, let's go to the slides again. Again, here also you are presenting to everyone. Again, there can be another. I'm always do like this. Then here also again we can articulate a question. What are the variables affecting the aggregate demand that the central bank can influence? Or you can say, what are the determinants of consumption and investment? What are the determinants of consumption and investment that the central bank can influence through its policy? That can be a question. Then we can say, okay, determinants of consumption are these. Now you can present the consumption function. Also, you can say, okay, determinants of investment are these. And of these determinants, central bank can influence interest rate. This is market interest rates. And also they are just to show that you are conversant in this subject. You can say, okay, these interest rates are market interest rate, but they have different dimensions. The interest rate that affect the savers is not the same interest rate that affect the borrowers. That is not the same interest rate that affect the investors of financial assets, but they are linked. Now, when the deposit rates are rising, lending rates also have to rise, and the rates of other financial assets also. Of course, not one-to-one, but there can be overall elevation of the entire structure of interest rates. They can go up, they can go down. Now, these days you can see this is a good example. These days, central bank has cut its policy interest rates significantly. Now, the standing deposit rate is 4.5%, and the lending rate is 5.5%. So they were for a few weeks back, they were 7.5% and 6.5%. Now they have brought down to this. As a result, what has happened in the banking sector? Deposit rates have gone down to around 4%. Earlier they were around 8%, and for senior citizens, fixed deposit rate was around 10.5%. Now they have gone down to 7%, and the loan rates, which were around 14 to 18% earlier, now they have gone down to around 8%. What has happened? When the central bank lowered the interest rates, gradually the interest rates in the market also has gone down. Deposit rates have gone down, lending rates have gone down. If you are familiar with searching this bond market and share market and all that, you can check whether the bond market rates also have gone down accordingly. Of course, as I said, it is not one by one. Then you can explain these things. So these are linked. Then when the central bank lowers the interest rate in a with different dimensions. Immediately, certain interest rates can go down. Some interest rates go down little later. When the central bank changes policy interest rates, these market interest rates also can change. Accordingly, both the consumption behavior and investment behavior can change. As a result, components of aggregate demand curve can change. Accordingly, aggregate demand can shift here and there, something like that. Okay, now I am going to, after this, okay, that's a possible question. Of course, there is no guarantee, but I'm saying, based on the discussion, somebody can articulate a question on those lines. Now we will go to little bit of more technical side of it. Monetary policy, then we said monetary policy can influence the aggregate demand. And there we have understood now aggregate demand has many components, but of those components, central bank is going to influence only consumption and investment. There are also some components. Before going to the interest rate part of it, now we are going to look at what usually happens. Monetary policy and aggregate demand. Now here, there are two terms here: contractionary monetary policy and expansionary monetary policy. This is the nature of monetary policy. Depending on what the central bank does, that particular policy can be identified as whether it is a contractionary policy, monetary policy, or expansionary monetary policy. Okay, let's look at this graph. On the horizontal axis, on the vertical axis, we can see the inflation rate, and here we have the level of output. We know that level of output. This, if you want, you can change this as short-term aggregate supply and aggregate demand. I don't know if you want. Because, we know at the equilibrium, output level is SAS means short-term aggregate supply. AD means aggregate demand. Aggregate demand. If you want, you can put like this, but there's no difference because aggregate output level is the aggregate supply at the equilibrium point that is equal to aggregate demand. Okay. Here, what we are seeing? So there can be many inflation rates on the vertical axis. There can be many output levels or aggregate supply and aggregate demand levels on the horizontal axis. And this is the short-term aggregate supply curve. Short-term aggregate supply curve shows the relationship between the inflation rate and the aggregate supply. Okay, this is the supply side. Here's the demand side. This is the demand side. The relationship between the inflation rate and the aggregate demand. When it comes to supply curve, it's the short-term aggregate supply and inflation. When it comes to aggregate demand curve, it is the aggregate demand and rate of inflation. What are we seeing here? We are seeing higher inflation is associated with higher aggregate supply. Now we know at micro level also, you have studied under your economics, supply curve is upward sloping. Their supply curve is micro sense supply curve, supply of a particular good and service. But if the supply of a particular good and service is upward sloping, if that is a theory, that is a law. Remember the law of supply? It is that if that is applied to all goods and services, when we take it in aggregate form, total aggregate supply curve is also upward sloping. Natural. Okay, aggregate demand is also same. We know according to the law of demand, demand curve for a particular good or service is downward sloping. Then if the aggregate demand is demand for all goods and services, If all goods and services follow usual law of demand, at aggregate form also, aggregate demand curve should be downward sloping. So no question. Here, look at very carefully. I did not mark these points with symbols because if we do it, it's going to be very, messy graph. I didn't want to do that. But I would like to use this. Say we have one common aggregate supply curve. Why? We said the monetary policy cannot influence the aggregate supply. Therefore, we should live with, we should analyze our demand with a given aggregate supply curve. That is this. Aggregate supply curve is given because monetary policy does not influence the supply side, it influences the demand side. Okay. Now we have taken a point here. I have marked this AD0. We can take this AD0 as a benchmark. Okay, when this aggregate demand AD0 curve intersect aggregate supply curve, the economy has aggregate demand and aggregate supply level of Y0. Then inflation rate is 50. It can be 5% or 2% or 3% or whatever. In the coming lectures, we will discuss this in detail. I invite you to be very observant and very familiar with this graph, because this graph is going to be used for the later discussions also. Therefore, it's important. Okay. If you have got a printout, you can mark this as the benchmark point, or we can say reference point. Reference equilibrium point in the economy. Because we know that when the aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply, that is a macroeconomic equilibrium point. This is the initial macroeconomic equilibrium point. Okay. Now, assume that there can be demand shocks. Demand shocks. Now, we know that during the election, for the election commission to conduct the election, they need 1,000 million. They say I think 1 billion. 1 billion rupees. They are going to, and I don't know whether it's 1 billion or 6 billion. A huge amount of money they are going to spend. They have to spend. What does that mean? They have to pay for all the officers who are engaged in election duties and drivers. There are so many. There are different types of services provided by different segment of the economy to conduct this election. So if the government, if the election commission has to pay for example, let's say I don't know how much exactly, 6 billion. That means that much money will go to the hands of the people. What will happen? They will have more money. Then if the government is spending by borrowing from the government, borrowing from the central bank, or borrowing from the banking system, those things we will discuss later. Assume for the time being that 6 billion rupees will go to the people's hand. What will happen? If a person, usually people don't engage in election duties every time, no? And those people who engage in election duties will have more money. Now they can start spending. And also reason now. Okay, we have a better example. Now the government, central bank has pumped money to encourage small and medium-term businesses these days, microfinance businesses, and also there was a conflict between the political authority and the central bank also, and you know those things. We don't have to discuss those things. But here, in the aftermath of COVID-19, central bank did a lot of expansionary policy. That is, central bank injected liquidity. That is the term. Injected liquidity to the market in different forms to encourage small and medium-term businesses. What does that mean? Those businesses will have money. When they start expanding their business or reviving their businesses, that money will go to the people who are engaged in those things. What will happen? They will start, the businesses themselves start spending. People who are benefiting from those also will start spending. So then aggregate demand can go to a point like this. So there is a demand shock. Don't refer to this because if you want, we can draw graphs here, but it will be messy. Suppose this was the benchmark situation. Now the situation has shifted to a point like this because of the expansion in the aggregate demand. How it can expand, we will discuss later. But in this case, now we took the example of central bank pumping the money. Here, aggregate demand can, this is what happened during the COVID pandemic period. And people could not move. People could not move. Businesses could not open their businesses. And transport sector collapsed entirely. When you take globally, they say 70% of the global aviation industry has collapsed now. That means people who were traveling earlier, and in Sri Lanka also, I think for the last 3 months, there were losses of foreign revenue. And also, and the revenue that we have generated from Middle East and all that, because those people lost their jobs, their money has gone down. As a result, what has happened? Because of the disruptions to economic activities, as well as not having sufficient money in their pockets, people, cut their expenses. What has happened? The economy has shifted. So this is a negative shock. This is a negative demand shock. This is the positive demand shock. Positive demand shock. Okay, then follow me very carefully. If this inflation rate was the inflation rate that the central bank thought as comfortable, let's say 2%, what has happened? Because of this expansion, it can go to 5%. Let's say 5%. You can mark it here 5%. And because of this one, it can go to 1%. Right? So here it is lower than the rate that they thought comfortable. This is higher than the rate that they thought comfortable. This was due to negative shock in the economy. This was due to positive shock in the economy. Central bank cannot let it continue like that. Therefore, central bank can take measures to push this towards this. What has happened? If the economy was operating here, central bank is making the economy to contract to this level. How? By pushing this aggregate demand curve towards this side. That we identify as contractionary monetary policy. Why? Inflation is higher than the rate that central bank thought comfortable. Right? Okay, take the other one. Here, what has happened? Here, this is the comfortable. Now, there are many terms. We will discuss them in detail later. This is the rate that central bank thought was possible. But now what has happened? Economy has shifted below that. If we draw a production possibility frontier, it has shifted below. Then what has happened? As a result, inflation rate also has gone down, right? If the central bank was maintaining inflation rate at 2%, let's say, okay, it was price stability. Now what has happened? Inflation had gone up than that. So central bank has lost price stability. It has gone down. Again, central bank has lost price stability. So if it is higher, central bank push this towards this, it is contractionary monetary policy. If it is lower, central bank can push it up, expansionary monetary policy. Okay. This is the nature of monetary policy. How central bank does it? Still, we did not discuss about how the central bank does it. We are simply showing. If the central bank can influence the aggregate demand to push it down, that is consumption to go down, investment to go down, aggregate demand curve will shift to the left. Here, if the central bank can influence the consumption to go up and investment to go up, aggregate demand curve will shift to the right like that. as a result, if the inflation rate was away from the comfortable rate, central bank is trying to push it towards that comfortable rate, either by contraction in monetary policy or contraction in monetary policy or expansionary monetary policy. Here again, we can articulate a question. The nature of it's like this: the nature of the monetary policy can be different as expansionary or contractionary, depending on what the central bank does. Then distinguish between the contractionary monetary policy and expansionary monetary policy. That's one question. Let me read it again. The monetary policy can have, I may not read the same thing. Monetary policy can have, can be either contractionary or expansionary, depending on what the central bank does. And explain or distinguish between, or they explain the differences between the contractionary policy and contractionary monetary policy and expansionary monetary policy, and explain what are the circumstances under which central bank could conduct contractionary policy or expansionary policy. Here we know if the economy is operating, if due to a demand shock, if the economy is operating at a higher level of output and higher level of inflation rate than the long-term sustainable one, central bank can take contractionary monetary policy. Again, we can say if the economy is operating below the long-term sustainable rate and long-term inflation rate, central bank can have expansionary monetary policy towards that. You can even take an example from the recent past, referring to the COVID pandemic. Now, I think so far we discussed a little bit of more technical terms, and also apparently we have spent around 2 hours. If we continue more, it will be heavy, and also you also will be a little bit feeling a little bit monotonous. Therefore, we can stop here. But before going to that, can I ask again from our friends whether, sir, is long-term contraction in monetary policy healthy to? Is long-term contraction in monetary policy healthy to country in the long run, or should it be for a very small? Gerald. Now, monetary policy is actually short, because the monetary policy is trying to influence the short-term interest rate. Because of course, central bank's policy horizon is long-term, but the actions are short-term. Then now, if you look at the recent past, if you take a few months back, central bank even went to tight monetary policy. Rates were raised, but in a shorter period, like within 6 months period, not long, within a period of 6 months, like now central bank has gone to the extreme expansionary monetary policies. The reason is this: because the economic environment can change from time to time. Central bank can now, if you have time to look at the central bank roadmap. At the beginning of the year, central bank announces its roadmap. It says, okay, within this year, we are going to maintain an inflation rate of this much, or the monetary expansion of rate of this much. That's on average. But from time to time, this, depending on the changes in the situation, central bank also has to change. Therefore, any monetary policy action is short term. Now, if you look at central bank monetary policy review press release, every month central bank changes that. Every month, central bank has a monetary policy committee, and monetary policy committee decides whether to keep the interest rate stable, whether to raise the interest rates, whether to cut interest rates. That is short term. but they have long-term objectives. The policy horizon is long-term, but the action is short-term. Gerald, is it okay? Is it clear now? Gerald? Okay, right. Good. I'm really happy if you ask, if all of our friends ask these questions, then it will be then you can make, because the monetary policy, central banking is actually central banking is a little bit of a technical, I can say, composite subject. Composite means you are combining many things together and try to understand. If you take demand, law of demand, then you know it is very simple. Law of supply, everything, market equilibrium, very simple. But when it comes to central banking, it has so many different dimensions. So many different dimensions. That's why it is. It looks very complicated, but it is really interesting subject. This is a very really interesting subject. I'll try my best as much as possible to make it interesting to all of you. Okay, then since we spend a lot of time on this technical stuff, and I mean, pouring a lot of technical stuff also will make you feel uncomfortable. Therefore, we will stop here. Unlike other Sundays, you can feel comfortable because tomorrow is a holiday. Enjoy the holiday. While studying, you also have to have comfortable, enjoyable life, no? Okay, then good night and have a wonderful weekend. Wonderful holiday, actually. Okay, see you. Take care. Bye.